Lightning is one of nature's most violent forces. Within an instant, upwards of 300 million volts strikes a grounded point. If this point is a living being, the chances of survival are slim. So what happens when the brave scientists of Super Earth channel a fraction of that energy into a large rifle? Well, we get the arc thrower. This stratagem is becoming well known as one of the most underrated support weapons in the game, and I'm almost certain it is seen as an underdog because many divers have experienced an unexpected and fatal shot from none other than their own squad mate. Has this happened to you? Well, I'm going to show you not only how to complete a mission with no friendly fire damage, which skyrockets its usefulness, but we will also go through its strengths, weaknesses, and quirks, so you can drop that railgun and give the arc thrower a try. Before we dive in, following my Eagle video, which you can check out in the top right, I'll be covering the orbital strikes as soon as I've gathered enough samples to test all of the upgrades. And I may be revisiting the Eagle's 110mm rocket pods as well, as many of you swear by them, so drop a sub to stay tuned. But for now, into the arc thrower. Right off the bat, we need to understand how the projectile itself works so we can avoid hurting our fellow divers. The bolt always aims for the center mass of its target, no matter which direction you aim, so to aim for headshots, your target needs to be facing you. If a diver is out in front of you, you should ensure you fire around them at a sufficient distance, whereby the shots won't arc towards the player. This is fairly easy to do as it essentially means we don't fire when a player is directly in front of you. The second part is understanding how the chaining mechanic works, so you can avoid hitting an ally with a chained hit. These chains can jump up to 3 times in total and will never jump backwards towards you, so if you fire at a target, any units in front of it will not be hit as well. Only units within roughly a 180 degree cone behind the primary target will be potential targets for chained hits. And this same mechanic extends to each enemy hit by each chain, meaning if your squad mate is between you and your target and you can get a clear shot, you will not risk hurting them. This essentially forces you to be aware of everyone's positioning at all times, which is a good thing anyway. The arc will also bounce between sentries, mechs, inanimate objects, and some dead bodies as well, which is something to be aware of when using the weapon. Another thing to note before we move on to the damage this thing can deliver is to avoid using this weapon in first person unless you really enjoy it and are used to it. This stops you from being able to visually manage how much the weapon has charged via the reticle, leaving you to do this entirely through the audio. Charge management is going to be very important when it comes to our effective DPS with this weapon, as once you have fully charged the weapon once, you do not have to charge it fully for subsequent shots afterwards, unless you hesitate or pause shooting. You can fire at a rate of approximately 1.2 shots per second, rather than 1 shot per second for fully charged shots, which only sounds a little, but in-game, as you can see, is actually quite a lot over time. This is an important mechanic to learn to maximize your DPS with the weapon. Now, let's go through exactly where this weapon is an absolute beast. That is in Termanid territory. This thing absolutely deletes almost every target without breaking a sweat. I'll preface this with the fact that you will get the most damage for a front-on shot on most of these enemies. Once you start hitting bugs on the side or behind, with the exception of the charger, time to kill can become very inconsistent. Front-on, it can kill all scavenger, warrior and hunter type enemies in 1 shot, and stalkers, bile spewers and brood commanders in 2 or 3. I will stress again though, this is hitting them front on, in the face, which isn't hard to do with bugs as they love to beeline for you. This is especially noticeable with bile spewers as it will take much longer to kill them from their giant behinds. When it comes to chargers and Bile Titans, I tested it in a solo scenario, rather than one where the enemy is distracted, as this will be the worst case. The charger took an average of 11 shots to kill, which were mostly headshots, which for a weapon with infinite ammunition and killing ability already demonstrated is extremely respectable, and does mean that you can feasibly solo chargers if you don't have any appropriate stratagem prepared. Though if you ever do land continuous clean headshots, you can kill it in 6 shots, which is extremely impressive. The Bile Titan on the other hand took an average of 50 shots to kill, whilst constantly kiting it, which is an extremely long and arduous process. The Titan is so large the amount of damage the thrower does is very inconsistent per shot, so unless you have a squad mate weakening it and opening it up properly, it's not very effective against them. It's also worth noting though, if you have good elevation and are at a moderate distance from them, you can deal a huge amount of damage to them, but they have to be facing you, and it's usually when they're charging their spewing attack where you will deliver the most damage. Now, whilst this weapon is incredible against the Termanids, it begins to struggle a little more when you face the Automatons. It's able to kill troopers, commissars and exposed scout striders in one hit, but the chain hit will not usually one-shot any subsequent enemies, which takes group killing potential down a notch quite heavily. This is further the case because it takes about 6 direct shots to kill a berserker and 2 to 5 to kill devastators. It will take an average of 11 shots to kill a Hulk front facing, similar to the Charger, which is obviously healthily reduced if they are facing away from you. The only issue with that is, they are usually chasing your squad mates when they are exposed like this, and as we already know, shots will arc within roughly a 180-degree cone behind your primary shot, so you're potentially putting a squad mate in jeopardy when firing at the back of a Hulk. There is no point in even considering attacking tanks or turrets, so I won't be covering them here. The strong fortitude of metal is apparently very resistant to the all arc thrower, so unless you really love the weapon, I would advise against taking it against them. But if you're truly dedicated to the arc thrower like I am, it can still perform very well, as long as you really dial in your target's prioritization ahead of time, and know when you will need to swap to your primary or secondary weapons to defend yourself. This is mainly needed when berserkers are walking towards you, as you may not be able to kill all of them on time, depending on how many are coming for you, so you may need to whip out your primary to finish them off. Now that we've gone through the damage section, there are some weird quirks to be aware of. Terrain can bug this weapon out completely and stop shots from travelling, even if it blatantly appears as though it should be able to. Whenever this happens, just move your aim upwards of your target a little bit. This will allow the shot to travel beyond this invisible wall and arc downwards towards your target. I've also found this block happen sometimes for apparently no reason at all though, which is always really frustrating when it happens. Sometimes it can hit targets at a great distance as well, and sometimes it just outright refuses to, and I'm unsure why. So if you know why, please do drop the reason down below. It might just be a bug though, of course. Another point is, if the enemy gets within melee distance of you, you're going to really struggle to land shots, so rather than struggling to hit them, just switch to your primary or secondary weapons and kill close threats with those instead. This is especially important if you let a stalker gap close to you, as they will ruin you and you'll be really gambling trying to shoot at them so close. And well, it's also amazing just not to worry about ammunition at all, which also lets your other squad mates swallow all the ammunition they need, and to be honest, I just find it extremely fun to use. I think it may be my favourite weapon in the game at the moment, so if you haven't tried it yet, please do give it a shot. I might take a look at more weapons, maybe the flamethrower now it's been given a juicy buff, we'll see. We are also going to be getting a bunch of new weapons this week on the 14th, including another arc related weapon, the Arc 12 Blitzer, which is a short-range, shotgun-style arc weapon, which looks like it will deal absolutely huge close-range AoE damage, so that looks like it will be a blast. For now, drop a subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.